Ceres 2009. And what you're seeing here is the roll teller client. So is it displaying okay for everybody? Did we lose you?
I heard a ding, so maybe their cell phone went out. Oh.
Are you guys okay?
Yeah.
Just a second. Can you hear that better? Could you really repeat that last one?
There's a lot of echo.
All right, sorry. I'm just trying something. Oh, wow.
Okay, I muted you guys for a sec.
My fault. Oh, no.
Wow, I've never heard an echo like that one.
Usually it's when someone's trying to come on from the computer.
Yeah.
Okay, so I turned off the computer part. I will be here to the phone only.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that's much, much better.
Not better?
Yes.
All right.
How is the video? Does the video display okay?
Oh, looks fine.
Okay, I know Aaron's been talking with you, and Ceres has been updated over time. And as Ceres has been updated, more and more functionality has been added related to warehouse management, inventory, distribution, etc. So what you're seeing here is what we coined Jupiter, and this is going to be the release going forward, which has even more warehouse functionality, inventory, distribution, receiving functionality than earlier versions have. So this is the latest and greatest at this moment in time. So this is going to be high level, and so we're going to go through some things quickly, but we want to make sure we meet your needs and get any of your questions answered. But this is called the Role Tailor Client. You have role centers. You can change which roles are assigned to each user, so you can have basically what displays here, what makes sense for each user. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in the role center. I'm going to go into other places because we only do have an hour. This is a fully integrated system, and what I mean by that, once you do an agency order, it flows to the GL. If you receive on a purchase order, it flows to the GL. If you receive a donation order, it flows to the GL. So everything is encompassing, so it goes into the nucleus of the general ledger. So people can work off their role center, like I said, or they can also come to departments. I'm going to come down to departments. So you can see that it is a full suite of functionality, and you can see all these different functionalities like financial management, agencies and receivables, purchases, donations, and warehouse. So first, just to start it off, because everything flows here, your general ledger with your chart of accounts. So basically, all transactions will flow back to the chart of accounts. And if I drill down here, here's where the entries reside. These are the general ledger entries. So you'll have a complete history of any transaction that posts to the GL, just like you would with inventory or agencies or purchases. So we're going to come now, we're going to go to agencies and receivables. I just want to quickly show you. We have the concept of parent agencies and agencies. So you could have a roll-up. So you could have a parent called Salvation Army as the parent. So in this example, we do have some parents. It is purely the roll-up. And then underneath that, you can have the hierarchy of agencies. So the agencies is where all the activity and all the shipments, distributions take place. You can see on some of them where I have an address of do not disclose. This way, if it's a shelter, you can basically hide the address so it doesn't display for the protection of the shelter address. I'm just going to go ahead and pick an agency and just pull it up just so you can see all the fields of data that do exist on an agency. There's just a lot of information here. This fully supports the Feeding America reporting requirements with these codes over here. But some of the fields that we did add just recently are like approval date, first order date, and there's other fields down on. So this is just the general FAST tab. If I collapse it, you will see all these other FAST tabs. Here's your 50C3 information that you can keep track of. We have information under shipping, so you can basically put defaults of what locations it's coming out of, shipment methods, and we also have some additional fields for how to handle the orders by grouping. You guys may have heard Agency Express. Agency Express is an online ordering system that's integrated in with Ceres. It doesn't come with the base product, but it's a functionality that you can get added later on. And so a lot of food banks who do have their agencies do the online ordering, they want to group their orders. So there's just a lot of information in here. If there's anything in specifically as we're going through some of these tabs that you want more information on, just let me or Aaron know, and I'll pause. So this is kind of the overall concept of the agency, of where you set up the fields of data. There's also information underneath an agency, so when you post transactions, you'll have what's called ledger entries, so all the agency history will be in the ledger entries. So wherever you see ledger entries is where the history is. I just happened to choose an agency that didn't have any history. And I could also have told that from over here because these fields over here are not updated. That's just kind of a real quick overview of an agency. Let's go over and take that same concept and look at a donor. And this is your product donors, not your financial donors. Most food banks do not keep track of or store their financial donors within Ceres because really all they want to store, at least the finance group is the dollars. They usually have Razor's Edge, DonorQuest, or some other third-party financial management donation tool to keep track of that. So again, you will notice as we go through here that a lot of the menus are the same, kind of the same concept. So here we have parent donors. This would be for the roll-up. A good example of a parent donor would be like Target or Walmart, kind of the roll-up. And then a donor would be all the Walmart stores or all the Target stores. So if I click on parent donors, you specify what you want as the parent. And each food bank could do it a little different based on their area. And this one, they have Walgreens and a couple of other ones where there's multiple stores underneath. If we take a look at donors, then here's the individual donor who's giving you the actual product. If we bring up General Mills, similar to the agency card, there's a wealth of information that you can basically store and track about the donor. And again, it supports all the Feeding America fields for reporting. And then you'll see these different tabs. I can collapse the tab so I'm not seeing all the information, but here's the typical tabs that exist. One of the things that was important to food banks is to be able to track multiple addresses, whether it be on a donor, whether it be on an agency. So we started adding some additional fields in Jupyter for some mail to address codes and other addresses. You'll also see that on the agency. Another thing that was really important to the food banks is kind of mass emailing of donation receipts, so that piece is now in there as well. So over here, what's important in the food bank world is gross weight. So we keep track of pounds received over here, just like we keep track of pounds distributed, in addition to case quantity, or whatever unit of measure you have for your items. Another feature that we recently added is because food drives are also, for many food banks, a way they get product in. So for those food banks who want it, we've separated food drive donors and food drive donation orders if a food bank so chooses to basically separate them and use that. So if I just open up a food drive donor record, it's going to look a lot very similar to the donor, but it may not have as much information because it's really designed for those, like the Postal Service food drive or those specific food drive events. Alrighty, then let's quickly take a look at a vendor. We'll then look at items, and then we'll go into some transactions. So again, if I take a look at my menus, they're organized in the same fashion, so it makes it easy for a person if they know how to, if they know a donor, they can come over to vendors. And you can restrict people to what access they have to the system through permissions. Just like each user can personalize what columns they're seeing here. That's as simple as going to choose columns. Here's what's displaying. Here's additional columns that they could display. So I could add it, move it up, freeze panes. You know, if somebody has started adding or removing fields, they can get back the defaults by just clicking there. So what's nice about the role-tailored client is that each user can personalize it so it meets their specific needs. So if I go ahead and bring up a vendor, and all I'm doing is clicking on it, which brings up a card. So now I'm looking at this specific vendor just like I was doing with an agency or a donor. And again, this is going to look a lot like the donor card. It's going to have some different information because we pay vendors, we don't pay donors. So if I collapse some of these tabs, how does a vendor or how does an agency, if I do transactions, know how to flow to the GL? It knows how to flow to the GL based on what's called a posting group. So for right here, this vendor knows what AP account to go to based on this vendor posting group. So if I click on that and then I come down to advanced, this is the different codes, and then here's the payables account it comes to, it will go to. On the agency side, it will be the receivable account. There's posting groups for inventory as well. These are all user defined. And then if you have discounts or other fields or functionality you're using, you just basically specify the GL account they go to. So this is the integration back to the GL. I didn't show you it on the donor because we're talking $0, but you would see agency posting group on the agency card. So far, any questions?
Those defaults that you can hit reset on, are those defaults?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
The defaults that you can set back, you know how you can select that default for the views of the columns and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
That default, is that default the one that comes with it, or is that a default that we come up with? How does that work?
The restore default is the one that comes with the system.
Okay. Okay. You know,
Other thing,
can you
I'm sorry, what?
create standard defaults there of the views?
Users can, if you wanted to do it globally, there's additional tools that you would need to be able to modify what's, because these are called pages. And so it's a tool that is available. Most food banks in the past have just gone with what the standard default is. Then they have users just go personalize it, because you could come up with a default, but people still can reorganize their columns.
Okay.
And so what a lot of food banks have just trained users and say, here, this is what's important. Let's display these fields. Because not only can you choose columns, but even here, if I so chose, I'm going to move this out of my way, is that you can personalize this as well. And that's as simple as clicking on what I call this little floppy disk and going customize this page. And these are called fast tabs. And so if I decide that I don't want the foreign trade fast tab on there, I can remove it. If I wanted it back, I could restore the defaults. And then on these individual fast tabs, I can choose whether or not I want these to show. So yes, you could come up with a standard, but just keep in mind, users can then personalize it based on that standard.
Okay.
And also very important along those lines is that once a user does this personalization to get all of the different pages as well as tables formatted, most applicable for their job duties, the system knows that formatting according to their user login. So it is saving all that formatting. They only have to do it once. And then every time they go in, it is going to look the same for that specific user.
Is that associated to his profile for when he logs in? Does it matter where he's at when he logs in?
Doesn't matter where they're at, it's a roaming profile. So wherever that person logs in, that's what they'll see.
Because
RTC is also
saving
Windows
those.
I'm sorry, what, Aaron?
I think we're going to say the same thing in a different way. It's saving those personalizations according to their user ID, not according to the computer they're on.
Okay.
So it makes it really nice. So if Bob's sitting at Sally's desk and logs in as Bob, but keep in mind, when you're on a workstation, this is Windows login. So if you are on somebody else's workstation, you'd have to do your Windows login, because when you launch RTC, it's a Windows login, so it's based on whatever Windows login when you launched it.
Okay.
So this was just the vendor card. And there are defaults on the vendor card, just like the agency, just like the donor card. For example, if I were to put a location code here, this would, a location code or an order handling code, this would flow to the, in this case, a purchase order once I selected that vendor. Same thing applies to an agency, same thing applies to a donor. So you can set up defaults so that you don't have to rekey it on the order itself. And again, we have ledger entries, we have other actions underneath here, so it's designed to give people a real quick link to other functional areas that they might be doing. For example, when I click down here, I could get to the payment journal, to pay this vendor, I can get to a purchase journal, etc. There's also certain reports. This by no means is all the reports in the system. This is just some reports that are linked to the vendor. You can link more. You could also put more information down here on what's called the action pane. So that's where the personalization comes in. So I'm going to come out of here. I escaped a little too far. So now I'm back here, and let's take a look at the items before we do some transactions. There's many places that you can get to items or donors or vendors. This is one of my favorite tools up here on the top right-hand side. You know, if you've searched for a couple of seconds, minutes trying to find something and you still can't find it, the simple as typing it in here. So if I wasn't sure where to go find an agency, I can just start typing the word agency, and it pops up a list of where it found that word. Same thing with item. And then it gives you every place it found the word item. So I can click on items. That took me directly to the items. And it also told me the path. I can also see the path up here. So in this case, it took me back to my role center. One thing that is also really nice in this version is that when you come into an item or an agency or a donor or a vendor, it immediately puts you into the list. So here's our list of items. This list is about 1,000 items long. The default sort is by description. That was intentional to make it easier, because over time, if this is just a straight across numeric value and you end up with 10,000 items or 5,000 items, some food banks ended up with duplicate items just because they didn't know how to search for it or didn't know it exists. So now if people come in with a common description, these are USDA items, because this is the USDA code right there. But if we keep coming down, and I could set filters, all I'm doing right now is scrolling. So we can just kind of see there's quite a few USDA items in here. But you'll notice now when I get down to here, in this case, so someone has put in this description field anything related to baby food. So it all sorts in alpha order, so it's real easy to find. Here's an additional description of the baby food, kind of what it is, and then here is the pack size. You basically can define what goes in any of these 3 columns, but the list by default does now sort by description. If you want to change it, you can just click here and you can change it. So if I want to do it by number, now my list is by vendor number. Same thing holds true for donors and vendors, but each list could have a slightly different default sort. It's one of those where what meets the needs of the food banks best. And the food banks are saying, please sort this list by description to make it easier. Because now when you look at this list, it's numeric, but see you have chocolate syrup, tea, napkins. So if you have thousands of records, it was harder for people to find it. So it's now by search description. Go ahead, and I'm just going to pick an item. I want to know which item has quantity on hand. There's a field called quantity on hand, which tells you what is on hand. So we'll pick one of these. We'll just come in here and do mixed fruit, just so we can see the item card. So again, number, descriptions, pack size, and then we have a base unit of measure. You define your base unit of measures, but the most common ones in the food bank world are case, pound, for product that's distributed regularly, eaches for kitting, for backpacks, but you can have other units of measure that make sense for your food bank. Here's the gross weight field. You can decide whether you're going to track fluid weight if this was a beverage, net weight, gross weight. You guys define this. Once you have transactions, if a person comes in here and decides, oh, I'm going to change it to this, a warning will pop up. I'm going to go ahead and say no, and then hit F5 to reset it. So now there will be a warning if there's entries and a person tries to change that. If you're not using Agency Express, or if you are using Agency Express, you can basically mark which items are going to go on the shopping list. Because some food banks have some items that they don't want the agencies to shop for. Because maybe it's salvage or it's something else that they need to do something else with. There's a lot of fields here. But this gives you the quantity on hand, and you can drill down, which will take you to the entries. So here's the history of this item. If there was quantities on purchase order, this is USDA, so there wouldn't be quantities on purchase order, but there might be quantities on a donation order. It also tells you, keeps track of warehouse entries, and if there's anything on an agency order. And then you could drill down from there to see the history. Other things are length, width, and height. So it basically calculates the cubic feet, and it also will calculate the cube density. I imported this data in, so if I rechange it, there is the cube density. All of this is to help loading trucks and to help the agencies load their vans or whatever else. I'm going to collapse the general tab. I'm going to collapse this one. I'm going to open up the distribution tab. Here's where you specify your costing method, because this is a USDA, it's actually a CSFP item, so if you want to do real-time costing of it, because we don't purchase it, you could set it to standard cost, and then you could have a standard cost in here and have the system keep track of the cost for you. And that cost or value will flow to the general ledger. If it's purchased, the most common costing method is FIFO. So some food banks choose to cost real-time their donated product and USDA products, some don't. The system supports it. So we have different cost fields that go into the calculation of the unit fees. Since this is a USDA item, it goes, in this case, it's going to go out with the fee or get distributed at $0. We have the posting groups again. The general product posting group controls revenue and expenses. So I'm just going to quickly come into here so we can see it. And then if I go to the setup, so here we have, here's where you're going to see things like sales accounts, purchase accounts, COGS, etc., and direct costs, purchase variance. So that gets all configured where you want it to post. So this this is the revenue expense side. The other posting group called inventory posting group for that full integration. This is where you're going to see the balance sheet side. So here's the balance sheet of where this USDA product is going to go to for its value. And you'll also notice that's by location. So I could have different locations go to different GL accounts if I wanted to. In this case, they're all going to, these two are going to the same GL account. This is in transfer for transfers between these two locations, which are isolated in a separate GL account. Again, this is all user configurable. So I'll go ahead and close those. Replenishment and planning. Purchase product in the food bank world is becoming a higher percentage of the mix of food. So there's a planning replenishment engine in Ceres that can be used to basically help tell you when you need to go reorder product. So this way the system can help you versus the model that a lot of food banks are doing right now called walking the warehouse to see what we need. Go ahead and collapse those. I'm going to come down here to what's called the item tracking tab. And this is where you have your lot numbers. Lot numbers are important for for internal tracking and for Feeding America reporting. Where you can have expiration and consume by dates based on the lot for calculations, to help with putaways, to help with, hey, we need to get this product out the door or this lot out the door before another lot. This is a new field for ship by date. So a lot of food banks want to say, hey, I have expiration consumed by, but I want another field to tell me, hey, to warn me to say, hey, I need to ship this by. For movements and just moving product within the warehouse, pallets, a lot of food banks, some of the larger food banks are doing what's called pallet tracking. It's not a true unit of measure. It's basically a piece of wood with a license plate, meaning the pallet tag, so it just helps with movements. For movements from a storage bin down to a pick bin, because most food banks, if they're going to move it, aren't going to move generally 2 cases off that pallet. They're going to move the entire pallet. You don't have to pallet track, but you can pallet track. You can pallet track on an item-by-item basis. So what does that mean? If I come into the item and I look at my pallets, the pallet knows the lot, the pallet knows the bin. So there's just a lot of information that's tracked pallet-wise. Then we see here's where we have the codes. FBC is a food bank code, so you can have your codes. Your codes get linked to the UNC codes. The reporting to Feeding America is based on the UNC codes. You'll see allocation, because this is another big thing with USDA where product gets allocated for many food banks based on some demographic information. So Ceres fully supports allocations, allocating that product, and then creating orders based on that allocated product. And then we have other things for kitting. Backpacks and other types of kits are a big thing with the food bank. So here's where you could basically link a kitted item to basically what's called a kit bomb. The kit bomb has all the components that go into it. And there's a lot of additional functionality that's coming into Ceres for kitting. And then we have audit and audit tab. The nutrition is going to be modified slightly, but it's going to be a way that you can keep track of some nutritional value. It probably, in the end, is not going to have this many fields. The reason being to make it easier for food banks to update the data. So that was just kind of a real quick overview on the item. Any questions on the item before we go into? We'll do a quick donation order, and then we'll take a look at an agency order. Uh-huh.
Just so you know, we don't have any USDA here.
Okay. So no USDA, so it's just mainly donated and purchased product?
Right.
Okay. So if I just were to bring up another one, I'm gonna stay out of the BPs. Those are backpack items. We'll just bring up some diapers. When I come to distribution, I can see that it's donated. It's per the pound. In this case, this one's going out at 10 cents per pound. So my unit fee is $1.10 per case because each case weighs 11 pounds. If I were to change this to 18, you will notice that the unit fees automatically update. So then the next time I use this item, it would then go out $1.98 per case. In this instance, this is a donated item, but the costing method is FIFO, which tells me in this case it's not being costed real time. Because there's a lot of food banks out there that they don't need to cost their donated product real time. They'll do journal entries at either year-end, month-end, or whatever time frame. There are some that do put a standard cost on here and do real-time costing. It's your choice of how you want to work donated product. Let's quickly find a purchase product just to see the difference. If I want to set some additional filters, I can just click here and go into advanced filters. And I happen to know that my purchase product is with an inventory posting group. So here's all the fields I can filter by. I'm just typing the letter I until I find inventory posting group. And then I'll filter it because I know co-op is purchase product in this database. So we'll go ahead and bring one up. So in this example, we chose to put co-op in front of it because I could have spaghetti with meatball donated, so co-op is a quick way to say, hey, this is purchase product without looking at any other field. This one, in this case, is FIFO, and it has a unit cost of that. And there is no markup, so it's going to go out at cost at $14.14. If I take a look at my pallets, in this case, this product has a lot of different pallets for this item. So it tells me the location, the bin each of these pallets are in, and whether this bin is a pick or a storage bin. And then here's the available quantity on each of these pallets. For pallet tracking, you have to know tier and height, which you can specify or input on the purchase or the donation order, or you could set up the defaults on the item. Most people don't set up the defaults on the item because it could change, especially with donated products. Sometimes, as you guys all know, you don't know what you're really getting till it's at your food bank. I also like these little facts box over here because it tells me information about the item without having to bring up the card. Any questions before we start getting into transactions? Okay, or is that a question?
No, we're good. We're good. We're okay.
Okay.
Cool.
I'm going to come into donation orders. When you come into donation orders or purchase orders or agency orders, this is a list of any open orders. And in my case, I have one open order, but if I wanted to start a new one, all I have to do is click New. Hit Enter. And I'm getting this message intentionally because I have different number series set up. So if a person tries to bypass what the setup is, let's discard those changes. What this is set up or is requiring me to do is click on this little button here because I have different number series. Because I want the user to specify, is this a food drive donation order or is this a product donation order? So I just select it and then my donation order number will be assigned. You don't have to split it that way. This is just how this one is set up. I can pick my donor from the list. I'm just going to pick one. We'll do Pilgrim's Pride. When I pick the donor, all the information from the donor card comes in. So you'll notice it brought over all this information from the donor card based on setup. It didn't bring department and project because I didn't have a department and project on the donor. Department and project are called dimensions for GL for splitting out data in the GL by department project, you define your dimensions. These could say anything that you want them to say. Over here we have dates. Posting date is basically the receiving date, order date, and document date. These defaulted to today's date, but you can change them. If you want to do fund track, if you want to track your dollars by fund, you can. And then here's the product sources. You can override the product sources if you want. I want to keep track of who's doing this. You can select. I'm going to select my initials. You can rearrange any of these tabs. On the shipping tab, I'm going to collapse one of these and come down just so we can see all the different information, because this is on an order. I could take off foreign trade and prepayment because it doesn't apply to donation orders. Routes. This functionality was created for handhelds in the truck, for those grocery rescues, or basically those food banks that do a lot of their activity, basically drive around in a truck. Receiving, I can put in a shipment date. There's other information that you can keep track of. So I could put my estimated freight cost for this donation order, load type, other information, if we're going to go pick it up, schedule date, etc. So these are some new fields that got added. And it's also on a purchase order to keep track of information, because sometimes food donations will show up at your door. Sometimes you literally have to go pick them up at who knows where, a grocery store, or wherever else. So this allows additional information to be tracked about it. Down here, this is for routing of so there's two different solutions that are integrated in with Ceres, Appian, and then UPS RoadNet, which is going to be changed because I heard that UPS no longer owns RoadNet. So it's more for routing. The one that is basically Feeding America sponsored initially was RoadNet, but there's some food banks who use Appian. So that functionality is in there if later down the road you want to go the Appian route. So that's just information about it. So I just come on to, so here's my donor information. So now I'm going to say, what did they donate? I'm going to pick an item. This is just a view of the items. If I want a more advanced view, I just click on Advanced. And I'm going to scroll down. Normally, who is ever doing this would probably know what the item number was or would quickly find it. I'm going to say that we're getting some caramel iced coffee mix. You pick your item. It brings in the description 2. Location, you tell it which location you're receiving it into. You define your locations. If I take a look at my location just real quickly, what's also nice on some of these lists, you can either be in edit mode or view. If a person doesn't have permissions to edit a record, then they will just have view. So you can control that with permissions. When you're in the view mode, the fields are grayed out and they can't be changed. This is just a location code where you basically do some definitions, some additional fields that got added to wave pick. You can wave pick by zone. A location is the warehouse itself. A zone is an area within the warehouse, like you have a cooler, freezer, dry area, maybe you have a salvage area, a shopping area. So you can wave pick by zone or UNC storage requirement. This also supports ADCS. And this is for your movements to move from a storage bin down to a pick bin. So all that functionality is built in. So I'm just going to pick Kansas. If I know the letter the word starts with, I can pick K, and it's going to bring me Kansas. If this item's pallet tracked, then I'm going to have to create pallets. But before I do that, I'm going to have a quantity. Let's say we're getting 250. It then calculates the gross weight. I can tell it which bin it's going to go into. What a lot of the food banks do is that they'll basically bring it into a receiving bin because they just want off their, their dock floor. Once it's in the receiving bin or receiving area, somebody will come through, with the handheld, scan it, and then put it away in the bin. In my case, I'm going to put it directly into, a bin because obviously I don't have the handheld hooked up to show you, but this does fully support ADCS. You can type in the lot expiration date, lot consumed by date. If you don't fill that in, when you post, it's going to set itself to 12/31/999. You can also do the ship by date. I'm going to come over here because I'm going to do tier and height. If it's pallet tracked, you have to do tier and height. So the typical one is 17 and 5. And what that's going to do is I'm going to create the pallets that's going to split the line. When I came off the line, it automatically assigned the lot. So now it's attached to a lot. I'm going to go ahead and create the pallets. So what it did is it took that quantity and split it out because I had 250. So what it did is it took the 17 times 5, which is 85. So it took 250 and divided by 85, so I got 3 pallets. I could then say, okay, then this pallet is going to go into B. So let's say my bin only can hold 2 pallets, so this bin is going to get those 2 pallets, this bin is going to get the single pallet. So there's my donation order. Obviously, if you, there would be a pallet tag that you could then put onto the product. Down here, you can print the labels. Once I have this, let's quickly take a look at what I can print from here. I can do a pallet tag. Just to give you an idea, this would just be a paper pallet tag versus, one of those sticky pallet tags. Some food banks, food banks just basically print these out and stick it on their product, so it gives you all the information about that line on the donation order. The other thing that if I wanted to print right now, I could do, I could take a look at the donation order itself. So here it is. You can have your logo print. You can control where your company address prints. Some food banks will send out a receipt by receipt. Some food banks will group them for the month because maybe Walmart doesn't want to see each donation receipt. They only want to see at month end. It supports that as well. Statistics, if I wanted to know the total weight on this donation order, I can look at it over here. I can click on statistics and get the same information. This is telling me the quantity and the weight. This over here is up to date. So this is not for this donation order. This is history. Once I have everything, I can go ahead and post my donation order. Inventory will not be updated until I post. So if I post, it's going to ask me. It's going to post. So now if I come to that item, I'm going to come over here to items. I'm going to type in that item number that I just wrote down. What the posting did. It updated the quantity once this displays. So if I drill down, we'll now see all those transactions that I did today. It's separated because they're different pallets. I can navigate, and this is going to show you every place it posted. So it's showing me every place it posted. There is no dollars. This is just the receipt. So that's why you're not going to see the general ledger, because this is just the receipt side of it. it was a purchase order, if I invoiced it, there would be a GL impact. But that's how the inventory gets updated. So now I'm going to turn around and do an agency order. Any questions on the donation order? If I wanted to transfer it from location to location, I could do what's called a transfer order. What's nice about a transfer order is that you can separate the shipment from the receiving. So one side who's sending it out can do the shipment side of it. The other side who's bringing it in can receive it. I don't know if you guys have multiple locations, but if you did, this is really helpful for the receiving and the shipping. We're now going to move to agency orders. Again, here's a list of all your open agency orders. I'm just going to click New. I'll start my agency order. You guys decide what you want your number series to be. Pick your agency or type in the agency number. Either way, we'll use you can set up warnings. So in this case, there's an overdue balance. You can also set it based on user setup, whether or not the user can override this. I'm set up so I can override it. There's warnings that are going to pop up if they have an overdue balance, if they're over their credit limit, and or if their monitoring has expired. You can track the user if you're manually inputting these, the user who inputted it if you want to. You can require shoppers, who from the agency is placing this order. You can also set up scheduled appointments. A lot of food banks are using Agency Express, which is the online ordering system. We'll have standing appointments, i.e. this order is going to get delivered every Thursday of the week, or the delivery is going to be Tuesday and Thursday, or the pickup is going to be Monday. So standing appointments, or you can just have order appointments. Basically, you know, for those food banks who don't use Agency Express and basically are doing these more manually, you can basically say, okay, I just got the order in from this food bank, from this agency. I'm going to schedule a time when they can pick up or schedule a time when we're going to deliver it. You guys set those parameters. If this order is a mobile pantry, you can click that. This is for Feeding America reporting. Some new functionality that came in, Voxware, is for voice picking. That's an add-on that you can use if you want to do voice picking. You can take a look at Voxware. So this is whether or not this order is going to get sent to Vox. Down here we have shipping information about this order. You can have, here's where your order handling, order routing codes are going to flow from the agency over here. I'm going to go ahead and select my location. Then this will then flow up to the lines, staging areas, other information here. If you're using Appian, routes and stops, so this makes it helps basically plan the route if you're delivering these. Delivery and web. This down here, we'll probably combine them on the same tab, but because you saw some stuff on shipping for Appian, down here is for UPS RoadNet. But also down here, you can have like a delivery zone. Some food banks charge a delivery fee, so you can have a delivery zone and then tie those zones to a different fee matrix. What's important for some food banks is going, okay, because you know, you have this order, it can combine frozen, refrigerated, or dry. After it's picked, someone has to stage it, so this is just kind of a count of the number of pallets of frozen, refrigerated, and dry for this order. So if somebody's loading the truck, or if the agency's here to pick it up, this helps to know how many pallets am I looking for. all these web fields are related to Agency Express. And then down here we have more information on Appian, etc. I'm going to go ahead and do my item. I'm going to use that same coffee. You can type in unlimited items. I'm just going to go with 1. It tells me the available quantity. We saw that we had much more than 10. What you can also set up is max quantities. So there's some product, a lot of food banks will set up max quantities, for example, diapers, so that an agency doesn't clean you out of the entire quantity of diapers or cereal. So I guess in this case, this caramel iced coffee mix is real popular, so we're going to limit them to 10 cases. So if I tried entering 11, it would error me out. So there's more than that in the warehouse, but this is based on user setup to restrict how much they can get per order. So they only want 2 cases. And there's just a lot of fields I'm kind of scrolling through over here. I'm going to go ahead and put my fund in here. My fees came in. The next process that I'm going to show you is going to depend on how you have your location configured. I have this location set up to require a pick. Some food banks could just get it set up so they don't have to create a pick, and or the pick is created from the order. Mine's going to be a separate document that the warehouse handles. So I'm going to go ahead and create my pick. I can create them from the order. I could go out to warehouse and create the pick. In my example, I'll just create it here, but we'll go out to the warehouse to be able to see this pick. So let's go ahead and create it. It's warning me that before I can create it, I have to release my order. So I can just come up here to my action pane and click released. You'll notice when I set that, then this tab updated here. So now I'll be able to create my pick. This pick's not going to be very exciting because I have 1 item. So if I want to go see that pick, I could get to the pick from the order, but I want to come out to warehouse management, and I can create multiple picks at once. If I were creating multiple picks at once, I would come to warehouse management and go where it says create inventory pick, and then I could basically create my picks, which is most common, by shipment date. It's just basically a function, and you could do it by location, etc. If I want to see my picks, I can come out to inventory picks. And here's a list of all the picks that currently are in the system. This is going to, since this is the last one, this should be mine. So here's my pick. It tells me who it's for. If I collapse this one's not mine. My pick must be it's probably this one because there's my pick. The generation of picks. Go ahead.
We are coming up on that hour. I wanted to make sure that nobody needed to have a hard stop. Is it all right if we run over a little bit here as Karen finishes up?
As long as the phone
as long as your battery doesn't run out, you're okay?
Yeah.
All righty, so I'll be quick.
Sounds good.
This whole pick generation process is based on setup, whether you do wave picking or not. And then you can also basically other parameters specify because a lot of the bigger food banks, they have a specific order in which they want their picks created to make it easier for routing, staging, etc. So that's why my pick I just created wasn't the last one. Based on all that setup and configuration. Again, a pick could have 1 item on it. It could have hundreds of items. In my case, it's just 1. You'll notice that when I created the pick, the Ceres logic went out and determined which pallet it was going to pull. If I decide I wanted a different pallet, I could pick a different pallet here. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to say this pallet is just fine. So basically, there's quantity of 2. If somebody in the warehouse decides, ooh, I really want this agency to have 3, they can't, because this is a true pick. You're telling somebody, giving them instructions what to pick. You can make it less, but you can't make it more. If they wanted more quantity, then you would go back to the order and you could create a second pick or you could create a second order. So you can manually input that, or there is a field, there's a function over here. If this had many lines, you can just do autofill. Obviously, if you had the handheld, you'd be out there scanning it, and then it would update this quantity. So there's my quantity handle. I'm going to go ahead and post it. Generally, the warehouse is just going to ship it. So now my pick has shipped. What that does is update the quantity on my agency order. So this is a true separation of that agency order being placed and then the warehouse activities. If I come back to my orders, so what shipping the pick did, prepped it so I could invoice it, because I can't invoice until this product's been shipped. So when I posted that pick, what it did is it updated this field right here, and it now tells me that 2 has been shipped. So then I can go ahead and invoice this. Invoicing it is as simple as posting. If I wanted to look at this before if I wanted to look at statistics, I could click on statistics or look at it over there. So a lot of food banks will take a look at what they're looking for is the total amount, looking to make sure, the quantities, the weight. I'm going to go ahead and post it. You can do a post and print. I'm just going to go ahead and post it. I can't ship it twice, so I just pick ship and invoice, and all that's really going to do is invoice it. Here's the great linkage. I could go back to that agency and see the history. But I'm going to come in here to financial management, and I'm going to get to my GL registers, so I can also navigate down. I can do Control-N to get to the end. So here it tells me that it was a sell. There's also our transaction in the GL for donations. So if I click here, because I want to see the general ledger impact, so there's my revenue. I don't have cost. Why don't you think I have cost? Because this is a donated item, and I chose not to do a standard cost real-time costing. Had I had standard costs on here, you would see additional lines for the cost. What you'd have seen is a debit to cost of goods sold and a credit to the inventory account. But here's your full integration. When I invoice that agency order, it records the shared maintenance and it set up the receivable. That's the full integration. If I want to navigate, I can get to the posted agency invoice. I could get that from the agency as well. I can show, I could have printed it. But here's now my posted agency order, so I've come full circle. If I want to print it to see what the agency invoice looks like, there's my agency invoice. Couple more things, just so that you can see them. I won't spend a lot of time on them. I wanted to click on inventory instead. But here's where you have your item journals for your positive and negative, your reclass if you're reclassing it from bin to bin. There's also a movement worksheet. So if you're moving, it's more of a automated way to move it from a storage bin to a pick, physical inventory. If I want to revalue the value of my inventory allocation, then if you have extra space in your warehouse, you can do lease storage. But that is Ceres real high overview. And I did it in close to an hour.
Yes, you did. That was great, Karen. Okay, so does anyone have any general questions or even specific questions about what Karen was going through? Realize that she was going fairly speedy because we wanted to be able to show you as much of that base functionality as possible in just the hour we had allotted for this. But if you have any outside of the box or what you've seen today questions, don't hesitate. Speak up.
Aaron? Can you hear me?
Yep.
when Ceres is implemented and you have training going on, what is the use? How long does it take them to get us as far with? In other words, what are they going to be? What's the learning curve on this?
Let me give you the overall answer, and then Karen can give you a little bit more specifics since she has actually done the training. But typically, we allot, after the implementation, a week's worth of training with your team. And Karen, do you want to give a little more insight into what level are you typically the users at after that week of training?
I mean, the goal is to give everybody to basically get everybody to a level of comfort or a level of expertise that they would be able to then go off and do some testing on their own. The learning curve is really based on individuals and how quickly they adapt to a different interface. But I find most people, it's a pretty quick adoption. You know, they quickly see the flow. Obviously, someone who has worked more with software day to day, it's easier for them to adapt than if a person's used to working off spreadsheets or something else. Does that answer or help you?
Yes, yes. I'm just trying to get a grasp of how long it would take to be, I don't know, I guess the word is productive with the system. You mentioned a week's worth of training. How is that handled? Is that like a remote training, or is there sessions going on, or how do you usually handle implementation and training?
We do it on site for multiple reasons. But before even that, what we do is that we come out, you know, the implementer orientates them with your processes, does requirements gathering, figures out if you have, you know, any additional requirements that are outside the box. We will also, most times, train on your data. Why is that important? Because, you know your items, you know your agencies, you know your donors. So it makes it an easier flow if people can relate, oh, that's agency so-and-so, or that's item such and such. So that makes it easier because it's kind of like your data, and then we basically break it down by functional area. And we try to go in a flow. So we'll start with some setup, do agencies, do donors, and then we'll do donation orders because we have to get some transactions in there before we can start doing agency orders. We try to plan it out that way so you can kind of see the flow beginning to end. And different people may swap in and out of those sessions. We also like to see somebody named at the food bank who's going to be designate the expert for that area so they can help other food bank employees after the training or do some train the trainer, because it's not feasible at times to bring everybody in the warehouse into training because you shut down your day-to-day activities. So some of the food banks will do that, say, hey, they'll bring in a couple people and they'll say, okay, then their role is to go help the other people once they've mastered it. And then we also come in site for your go live. And then in between, there's a lot of remote sessions to get the database set up and refined.
Karen, this is Mike. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you leave in a week, our people are up and running, and you know there's going to be a hiccup. We know there's going to be a hiccup. We have access to you guys for access.
Oh, absolutely.
For free, right?
Not free. It's all part of the project budget.
You know, so the set budget is it like you're always going to have support, right? We'll always have support with Ceres. We'll always want that, keep that support and keep going, correct?
Right. You'll notice, Mike, that in the line items on the budget, there was a line item for go-live support. So what you're talking about is that support that is included with the implementation. Once that is complete, then you do continue to receive support from us, which we handle a couple of different ways. We can either do support packages, or we can just simply do an hourly support where when your employees, when your team needs support, they call in, and then we just bill you on an hourly basis for that support.
Because what we have found in past experiences, the level of support is much higher right after go live, you know, the first, second, maybe third weeks. After that, it really starts tapering off because people start getting a lot more comfortable. And keep in mind, even before you're cut over or you go live, you've had your training, and then there's like 6 weeks in between training before you go live, so people can start getting comfortable before they go live.
Makes sense to me.
So
you guys are actually going to be in advance. Sorry, Karen, go ahead.
The food banks that have had the most success are the food banks that have, you know, dedicated time after the training to actually have users go into the system. Is it work? You bet. But does it pay off in the end? You bet.
And you guys are going to have an advantage in that that aspect as well. Having Ryan running this project and be able to be the go-between and be able to do additional training during that 6-week period, so that as he is helping employees one-on-one learn their specific duties after the training, before the go-live, if they run into issues, he can come back to our team, and having that general centralized knowledge with him is really going to assist that process with getting your staff, your team up to speed.
And what we'll also provide, I went into this folder, is that we have written, and we're continuing to update them, we've written procedure docs. We used to publish manuals that were a couple hundred pages long, and most people would get that and go, there's no way in heck I'm going to read that. So we split it out so people can, you know, go to specific areas. I'll just go ahead and bring one up. So this one, so it's just a typical one. We've tried to keep them short enough, but this is like how to use the physical inventory journal. Kind of steps you step by step. So after the training, you know, if somebody wants to know how to do something, they can come read through the document and you know, give it a shot. But you will see there's documents for many different processes. And with the new functionality, we're going to continue to update these. Some things that we didn't show you was called Grocery Rescue. I don't know if you guys do Grocery Rescue. Go pick up at some of the big grocery stores. But if you do, there's templates you can fill out and then import that data in. So the functionality in Ceres has, you know, it's been updated based on the needs of the food bank to make their operations go more efficiently.
Karen, I think this gives us a really good overview, Aaron. Our people are already buying into it. They know they want to change. So we already have the buy-in. Now it's a matter of, I take this board, Joe's here, he's on the board, and then we go forward. And we see the benefits. We can look at it just on that if I watch it. We're not, you know, there's going to be a learning curve. We get that, but you know the end result.
Sure. Sure, and I hope that also this has provided an opportunity for Susan to really see exactly how having all of this integrated is going to make the financial end of things so much more seamless from her perspective in terms of as product is purchased or donated, it is flowing through the system as then it goes out with sales orders. That is also flowing through the system, keeping that all tied together. eliminating a lot of that dual, triple data entry that we were discussing before.
Right. Absolutely. I think it will all communicate, which is kind of nice. I don't have to go to 4 different people to find out how many boxes of cereal we have out there.
Right. Exactly.
No, this is good. Joe, you have any questions for next step? Did you go for it?
Then there's the choices between, I guess, hosting it by Feed in America. That's the one. Oh, they don't do that anymore.
They're not hosting on there.
They are not typically hosting any longer, no.
Okay, so we would host it ourselves internally on a server?
Correct. Correct. And that was some of what we had discussed in some initial conversations, that as you have already started building that infrastructure, that sounded like the best option for you as well. There is still external hosting, but it's not by Feeding America. It's by hosting providers that we team up with for companies that do want to host their databases off-site. But it sounded to me like from what we were discussing before, that hosting it internally was going to be the best option for you, considering that you have already started building that infrastructure.
Okay.
And the food banks that are live on Ceres 2009 in California, Santa Clara, Contra Costa, they're self-hosted. Santa Barbara is also live, but they're hosted. They went live about a year ago, so they still got under that umbrella.
Oh, with Feed America?
Yeah.
Well,
I don't have any more questions.
I have no more questions. I just got to get Joe pumped up to go to the board, get money.
Thank you, Ryan.
You guys.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
Thank you all very much for taking the time. And if you think of other questions later, do not hesitate to contact me. Mike, I'll touch base with you early next week so we can discuss next steps and anything else you might need from us, and get moving.
Sounds good to me. I'm going to be helping Joe move forward on the board. It's all exciting. I can tell looking at him. It's a good deal. So we just have to go to the board and just kind of tell them what went on today, and we'll go forward. So I'll be talking to you probably next week.
Fantastic.
Thanks, you guys. Thank you, Karen.
All
You're
right.
welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Karen. That was incredible. That was a great overview. And you all have a good weekend.
You too. And we'll be talking to you next week. You guys are awesome.
All right. Thanks.
Bye. I gotta go back.
Here's the next meeting. Narrow down.